Hello again, peoples. I'm Blunty, and this is the Omate TrueSmart. It's a fairly advanced smartwatch that I backed on Kickstarter way back in August of last year, and it's finally been delivered. Now, it's not exactly the product that Omate promised it would be, and there's a long list of broken promises, bad communication, and flat-out lies from the people who made it, and I and over 4,000 other backers on Kickstarter are pretty annoyed about it all, actually. But in this video, and a more complete review I'll have as a follow-up to this video, I'll be judging the product on its own merits as it stands on its own 2 feet, not by the infuriating nightmare of nearly catastrophic ineptitude that we backers have endured for the better part of a year. So bitterness aside, it's actually pretty nice end product. It's far more advanced than other so-called smartwatches from the likes of Samsung, for instance, and it's actually capable of being a fully functional standalone device. It's pretty much a mid-level Android phone crammed into a watch. But I'll dig into all that properly after a bit more testing before I publish my full review. For today, I wanted to check out what the camera can do for 2 reasons. One, of course, you regular folks will know I'm a bit of a camera nerd, and secondly, every other example I've ever found of user-posted photos or videos from the Omate TrueSmart smartwatch were sloppy and half-assed crap, quite honestly. So at the risk of ruining my reputation as being humble, I figured it might be about time for someone who actually knew what they were doing with the camera to give it a go. Now, unfortunately, the camera is one of the many broken promises from the Kickstarter campaign. They promised a 5 megapixel camera, and they promised, as one of the stretch goals that they hit and surpassed, 720p HD video. Neither of those things were actually delivered. The video is a paltry 864 by 480, widescreen SD basically, which for this video I've stretched out to a standard 720p, and while the watch will save a so-called 5 megapixel still image, it's actually interpolated from a 3 megapixel sensor. So for the stills I'll be showing you after the videos here, I set it to shoot in its native 3 megapixel resolution because the software interpolation up to 5 megapixels actually makes the photos look worse, and it's buggy and kept crashing the camera app about 30% of the time until I moved it back to standard 3 megapixel images. But again, on its own merits, as the hardware stands, it's a pretty ordinary camera, just like what you'd find on most low-end Android phones anyway. I was never expecting the camera to be awesome. I mean, it's a tiny little thing crammed into the side of a friggin' smartwatch that cost me less than $200 for crying out loud. Only an idiot would expect iPhone-level camera performance. And everything you're seeing here in this video has been edited at least a bit to do things like push up the contrast and correct some colors, and basically just to get it looking better than the less than spectacular default look. So all that said, for the kinds of uses you'll actually need it for, it's perfectly adequate. I mean, no one's going to be seriously shooting cinema on this thing, are they? Well, maybe someone will, but just for gimmick value, like some projects that were made in the first iPhones and other camera-enabled smartphones, which really only got attention because they were shot on iPhones and early smartphones. Anyway, the white balance is crappy, even if you set it manually. Details are mushy, the noise, even in bright daylight, is ugly, tones are harsh, the dynamic range is very limited, quickly blowing out the highlights, and colours, well, they aren't what I'd call accurate. The exposure adjustments are very chunky too, and of course, it's useless in low light. But motion looks nice enough, smooth, consistent, without any frame rate issues or anything like that. Enough for snatching up quick clips when your smartphone or dedicated camera isn't handy. And in black and white, I actually kind of like it. All of the issues with colours and white balance are of course negated, and the low res, low dynamic range and graininess all kind of combine to give it a nice crunchy black and white look that I actually find quite attractive. So if I were to produce a gimmick short film or something, I'd go black and white. When it comes to audio, yeah, it's okay, but again, pretty much what you'd expect from a full-size, low to middle-of-the-range Android handset from the last 2 years. It's kind of thin-sounding and very, very susceptible to wind noise, but it gets the job done in most circumstances. And when it comes to the stills, it's very much the same story, of course. And again, I found as a black and white shooter, it's a lot more pleasant than trying to deal with what the camera does to colours. Again, in low light it's useless, no surprises there, but at least it didn't try to push its own ISO sensitivity far too high in order to compensate. So instead of violently horrible, noisy low light pictures, they're just kind of dark and soft. I can live with that. Right out of the camera, just like video, the auto white balance is almost always completely wrong, and the various manual settings, sunny, cloudy, tungsten and all that kind of stuff, are simply not calibrated correctly, not even close in some cases. They get it even more wrong than the auto mode does. And again, just as a reminder, everything you're seeing here I've taken into an editor and at least done some basic corrections to. White balance, contrast, saturation, that kind of thing. And if you start thinking about the images you can make from this thing more in terms of faux retro pictures, you can actually get some fun results. That's why pretty much all the colour images here I've pushed into the very warm, almost sepia tones for that 70s Polaroid vibe. I've crushed the shadows into oblivion on most of the black and white images for a high contrast, punchy, filmy kind of look. And all this retro potential is also helped along by the unusual square format it shoots in. So it's actually kind of ideal for you filter sluts and Instagram addicts. I mean, there's no shame in going nuts with aggressive filters when your starting point is already a low-res grain fest. You're not kind of ruining the image quality by adding those filters, are you? The camera here will never replace the surely superior one on your smartphone, in your pocket or bag or whatever. Never mind even the cheapest off Happy Snapper point-and-shoot compact cameras, but it's not supposed to be able to. This is for quick and dirty snaps, so you can remember the name of that book you saw in the shop, or that interesting thing you saw while jogging, or, if you are a photographer, for some deliberately lo-fi playtime. It's crap, but it's an enjoyable kind of crap if you just accept it for what it is instead of whining about what it isn't. So anyway, that's the camera on the Omate TrueSmart Android smartwatch. Keep an eye out for my full review in the next fistful of days, if everything goes to plan anyway. But thanks for watching. Hope this has been either helpful or interesting or just a decent way to burn away a few minutes of your day. I'm Blunty, and I will catch you next time.